In this video, we're going to look at solving a quadratic by a bunch of different ways. I'm going to start with taking the square root. This particular problem truly is solved most easily by taking the square root. And so if I was not trying to teach you multiple methods, I would go directly to taking the square root. So when I look at this problem, I see that it has x squared. I know that the opposite of x squared is square root. So I can take the square root on both sides. And square root and squared cancel, so I have x equals. I know that the square root of 9 is 3. However, I also know that quadratics are supposed to give me two answers, and so I do need to insert a plus or minus. So this is the most efficient way to solve. If I had this on homework, I would just solve this way and I would be done. But we're learning, and so we're going to go through the other methods as well. If I were to solve by graphing, by factoring, or by the quadratic formula, the first thing that I need to do is have this equal 0. In order to have my equation equal 0, I subtract 9 from both sides. That gives the formula x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. We're going to solve it next by graphing. So I will go to my graphing calculator, go to my y equals, clear out my previous problems, and type my formula, which is x squared minus 9. This formula has no context, so I'm going to use zoom and option 6, the standard window, and see if it shows up. And it does. Now, we talked about early in the semester that zeros are roots, or positions where the graph crosses the x-axis. So in my graphing calculator, I have an option to find a 0 or a root. So second trace, option 2 is 0, hit enter. When I go to find a 0, it is much like finding a maximum or minimum. It asks me for a left bound, so I am to the left of the first time it crosses the x-axis. Then a right bound, and then a guess. And I find that the first 0, the first root for this, is at -3. I repeat the process to find the second root, or second place that it crosses the x-axis. So again, second trace, select 0. I need to be to the left of the 0, which is about here, and then to the right of the 0. And then I come back and hit enter, and I find the second 0 for this equation. So the two answers that I found were the same two answers I found by the other method. And so showing how to do the graphing method, I graphed my parabola. I used second trace and then the 0 feature. The zeros are the places where it crosses the axis, and they occurred at -3 and at +3, which are the same two solutions we got by taking the square root. For our next approach, we'll try factoring. In factoring, we wanted the equation equal to 0, which we have. We also want the equation to have all three parts. So we had our equations in standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. This particular equation is missing the bx term, but we can fill in that bx term by writing 0x. This means that I will now be looking for factors of -9 that add up to 0. And I see that -3 times +3 would be factors that multiply to -9 and add to 0. I create my two sets of parentheses, set it equal to 0. I split my x squared to x and x. I put in my two factors, -3 and +3. And then, using the second half of the theorem, I set each factor equal to 0, and I solve. And once again, I have two answers of positive and negative 3. Same as I've gotten by the other methods. Finally, we have the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, again, needs our equation to be in standard form, and we need to start by identifying our a, b, and c values. So our a is an unwritten 1, our b is 0 for the term we filled in, and our c is negative 9. The quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I move through the formula filling in the numbers. So I have the opposite of 0, which is 0, plus or minus square root of b squared, so 0 squared is still 0, minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Simplifying, the 0 in the front is just 0 plus or minus. Inside my square root, I put all of this on my calculator, so 0 minus 4 times 1 times negative 9 gives a positive 36 over 2. Simplifying on top, 0 plus the square root of 36 gives 6 over 2. So that was the plus. And 0 minus the square root of 36 gives negative 6 over 2. And simplifying further, I get answers of 3 and negative 3. So, 4 different ways that the problem can be solved, all of them doable. Taking the square root was hands down the easiest. Graphing would have been my second choice. Factoring was not too bad. Quadratic formula felt like overkill because there were so many other ways that this problem could be solved. We're going to go through additional examples, and you'll see value in each of the methods based on the problems that we look at.